The Dave Hooker Show.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app.
Download now for free.
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Boy, here we go. And we got a lot going on and exciting times, even though they may be stressful times for you. Good morning, Tom. Billy Bob saying, boy, we got our butts whipped. Caleb promised national championship game. What happened?
When did I promise that? What?
Don't remember that. David said it's the offensive line. We don't have Orange Bowl Joe because over the half of the offensive line is gone and Mays is hurt. A lot of truth to that. And somebody that knows football way better than me told me, you don't have a Darnell Wright. And it was you, me, and Josh Ward that joins us on Thursday that most oftentimes said that Tennessee doesn't have a Darnell Wright. And now they don't have a Cooper Mays, who was their second most physical offensive lineman. So that's a real issue. But let me go ahead and set the show today. And if you have not subscribed yet, do so. Hit the like button, turn your notifications on, because a guy you may have heard about will be the next interviewee of Celebrate 98. I think most of our listeners have heard of Philip Fulmer, which we'll record tonight. Caleb, is that fair? Most people have heard of Philip Fulmer?
I believe plenty of people have heard of Philip Fulmer at Tennessee.
Is that a big get there, or is that a big get?
It's a pretty big get. I believe he was the Coach of the Year award winner on that 1998 national title team. Yeah. Well done, Dave. Well done.
Thank you. So the Celebrate 98 series continues.
You had to work like heck to get that one.
I did have to work like heck. I really did. And it's brought to you by Tennessee Cider Company, the original hard cider of the Smoky Mountains. Use the promo code HAT to receive some free swag on your cider order, available most anywhere in the United States of America. tncidercompany.com. Use the promo code HAT. They bring you Celebrate 98. So Philip Fulmer dropping tonight or tomorrow, but we'll record that with Fred White. Exciting times. Tuesday means John Adams, who we always love to visit with. And there are a ton of things going on, as you know, in Tennessee's football program, and a couple things that we want to highlight on the show today. We'll get to the Mel Tucker firing at Michigan State, how that can affect the Vols. Omarr Norman-Lott has been suspended, and what we're going to get into is your confidence in Josh Heupel dropped at all, and Tennessee's most likely record to finish the season. And as far as your confidence level in Joe Milton, where is that? So we've got a lot to get to. Yesterday was definitely a busy day, but this one will be every bit as busy. How are you, Caleb Calhoun?
I'm good. Things are doing well. Happy Tuesday to everybody. I didn't get to talk yesterday, but I enjoyed my Titans win over the Chargers on Sunday. How about Ryan Tannehill being better than Justin Herbert?
Might be the last time you ever say that.
I'm obviously joking. Justin Herbert's better. Tannehill just has more help.
Yeah, I love Justin Herbert, man. Just his ability, but not to get sidetracked. We'll also talk about Joe Milton as well, as we appreciate you getting on board, John Adams, to join us very shortly. And the Omarr Norman-Lott suspension, also 3 Gators suspended. And I'm just curious what you thought about that suspension coming down yesterday, as suddenly the Vols have a center who may not be ready to play, a guy who handles their play calls on defense, a transfer, Keenan Pili, he might not be able to play. Apparently, Dylan Sampson, who is banged up, according to Josh Heupel. And then you have Gerald Mincey getting busted for marijuana possession and casual exchange. I guess casual exchange is handing a joint over. That's not distribution. I guess it's just, hey, Caleb, here, take a hit of this. And then also you have the ongoing situation of this Tennessee football team struggles against Florida. When does that end? I don't know. But John Adams joins us now. John, nice enough to join us, and that's brought to you in part by our friends at Andy Mason Real Estate. I will tell you more about that. John, good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever someone might be watching. How are you, sir?
Excuse me, Dave. I need to turn down my volume if that's how you're going to roll today. I want to start off by apologizing to Caleb for my comments about his T-shirt sports coat combo last week. That was unprofessional and inappropriate. I'm thinking about entering a 12-step program for ridiculing others. I've had a problem with that throughout my life, and I think now's the time to enter that program.
Well, you might have to step that for Billy Napier, John.
Yeah, I will say this, John. No offense, but I think Caleb has us both beat in the dressing department.
He does today, but that's one day. You've got to be consistent.
Yes. One day does not a career make, and one Virginia game does not a season make. Here we go. Today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Boom, with John Adams and Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
Today's tough question. Take a side.
Take a stand.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, listen to me closely, my peeps that are on the message board, because I want to hear from you. You can also send us a message via the Twitter, and we'll get to that. Orange Blood says the incomparable John Adams, and he's right. So, and Mr. President, not that John Adams. All right, today's tough question, after what you have seen, is this Tennessee football team more likely to finish 7-5 or 9-3? Now, what I would like to ask you to do on the message board, because we have the best group of fans who are passionate yet still objective, I would like for you to pick one of those and tell me why, and we'll work you in to the conversation. So, John, I will start with you. This is kind of funny well, not funny. It's sad for a lot of fans, but I actually was thinking 10-2 or 8-4 before the Florida game. And I would have probably gone with 8-4. Well, now there's another loss under Tennessee's belt. So 9-3 or 7-5, which would you pick if you had to pick one of those two records?
7-5. Tennessee now, I picked Tennessee to go 10-2 in preseason. Oops. Problems at quarterback, offensive line, and secondary. That's a lot to overcome if you're trying to win 9 games. I just don't think Tennessee can pull it off.
Caleb, 7-5 or 9-3?
I'll still, with those two, stick with 9-3 because I know there's problems at quarterback, but I do think whenever Cooper Mays gets back on the field at 100%, I think you'll see the offense look drastically different. I think they want to be able to. I think the problem against Florida is they just couldn't run the ball the way they want to, and I think with Cooper Mays back, they'll be able to do that.
I will agree with that, and I'm going to go 9-3 for that reason. I think Cooper Mays will be back eventually. I don't think there's any reason to bring him back versus University of Texas San Antonio, and I think that he'll come back and he'll bring a settling influence, to a calming influence to this group that I don't think they had on the road against Florida. And I think he's just overall a better player and a leader. So Tennessee could still drop games to Georgia and Alabama, which we entered the season thinking would be the two best teams in the conference. But I'll add this as well. John, the whole conference is down. And Caleb, credit to you, sir. He said it first after the first week or first 2 weeks. It just feels like the overall conference is down. And I think Tennessee could beat an Alabama or could beat a Georgia that maybe seem difficult because Alabama's on the road and Georgia's Georgia. But I think that's a real possibility. John?
Oh, yeah, that's probably the best thing Tennessee has going for it at this point is that it's a weakened SEC in both divisions. So, yeah, you would if Tennessee was playing well, you would certainly like its chances against Alabama or even Georgia, since that game's at Neyland Stadium. But Tennessee's not playing well, and it's not just one game. It's played bad games back to back now. Austin Peay. I think we wanted to maybe dismiss that as an aberration. You can do that. You say, well, Tennessee couldn't get up for an FCS opponent. It's looking ahead to Florida. But no, that was a precursor of what was to come. Tennessee struggled to put away Austin Peay, and that speaks volumes. Let's face it, Tennessee's play. And I think the schedule has given us kind of a diluted view of Tennessee because Virginia's probably the worst Power 5 conference team in the country.
I was about to bring up that point. They, if you look at what they have done this year, John, it hasn't been very impressive whatsoever. And looking at their schedule right now that we have a little bit to work off of course, they lose to Tennessee 49-13 in the opener. They lose to James Madison 36-35, and then they lose to Maryland 42-14. The only thing good to ever come out of Maryland is sitting with us, and that's Caleb Calhoun. It's certainly not football.
Crab cakes and football. What are you talking about? That's what Maryland does.
Yeah, horrible.
And noted respecter of people's lives, Ray Lewis played in Maryland for a long time.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so
Wow.
Rocky Top Tom says 7-5 or 6-6. Elias says 9-3 if we figure out how to scheme around the issues. Well, the issues are injuries. David says with Mays 9-3 without 7-5. And I've been around a couple of football teams that have had significant injuries. Caleb and I were talking about that this morning at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting. And he said the 2002 team. Now, did Tennessee, I'm trying to recall, even though I covered that team, Kevin Burnett and Constantine Ritzman were hurt early in the season. Do fans give much of a pass for something like that? Or is it just, hey, at the end of the day, it's your record, John?
It's your record. Everybody has injuries. I mean, Tennessee has, what's it lost so far? It's lost Cooper Mays. It's lost Pilley. Those are significant losses. We assume at some point, based on the way Josh Heupel describes it, Cooper Mays is just about ready to get in there and knock some people around. That's been happening for about 3 weeks now, but he remains on the shelf, so to speak. But I think, I mean, you look around the league, other teams are experiencing injuries too. Some have suffered bigger losses in Tennessee. That's just part of it. You have to overcome injuries. That's where depth comes in.
Yep, totally agree. And one more note from the message board I want to get to. I remind you, it's brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Real estate experts with over 4 decades combined experience in East Tennessee. Best prices, best service in the Knoxville area. Go to AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Dan says 7-5 based on 3 games with no improvement. Supposed to get improvement between game 1 and 2 and has not gotten better. You could argue it got worse because, I mean, definitely. But again, Virginia is just so bad, it's hard to use them as any sort of barometer in one shape, form, or fashion. Makes me think of Craig Elo defending Michael Jordan on that jump shot. That's what the Cavs remind me of. All right. Let's change topics for a moment, if we may. And it's brought to you by Apex Apparel Group. And that is, John, I'm going to start with you. Very simply, have you lost any confidence in Josh Heupel as far as being one of the upper tier coaches in the nation?
Definitely. The Florida game, I lost some confidence in him. I mean, going into this season, I consider him to be one of the best offensive coaches in college football. And that's based on his track record. You can't argue with that. You don't change that over a bad game in the swamp or even a struggling performance against Austin Peay. But I don't know what he was thinking in the second half. Obviously, he lost confidence in Joe Milton. Obviously, he has little confidence in his offensive line, but you still got to go for it. You got to go down swinging. Milton was able to hit Brew McCoy on one touchdown pass, but it just keep running the ball while like clock's running too. It was almost as though he was playing to keep it close. So I was baffled by that. And now we've had back-to-back games, consecutive games in which this doesn't look like a Josh Heupel offense. And maybe I was too praiseworthy of him initially, but we have going into those two games, we had 27 games of evidence. I never thought I would see a Josh Heupel offense look the way Tennessee's did against Austin Peay, and certainly not in the swamp. He kind of had that deer in the headlights look on the sidelines, like, I got no answers for this. And maybe he really didn't, but yeah, so that affected my confidence level.
Caleb, let me go to you. Confidence level dropped in Josh Heupel?
Not Josh Heupel, the play caller, because I'm going to push back on you, John, a little bit. I get your point, but if you remember, Tennessee did get down into the red zone one time, failed on a 4th and 1 because the referee kicked the ball, and that probably would have been a touchdown drive. Their final drive, there was a pass interference penalty. There was that blindside block on McCall and Castles on another one. Brew McCoy drops a 3rd down pass. So, yes, he stuck with the run, but Tennessee still had enough possessions where they moved the ball where they should have scored on to win that game in the 4th quarter, or in the second half. So that's why I don't blame Josh Heupel, the play caller. Josh Heupel, the evaluator of talent. Yeah, no, I've been questioning that from the start. Now I'm really starting to question it because this is every time I see him now, I don't know what Josh Heupel saw to think Joe Milton was better than Hendon Hooker when he started him over Hooker 2 years ago. That was always a red flag to me, and it's a bigger one now. Josh Heupel has missed on a lot of, like, this is the first year you could say this is really his offensive line. And his guys he's missed on. The best blocker out on the field right now is Javonte Spraggins. That wasn't a Heupel signee. So I think the issue with Josh Heupel right now is I think Josh Heupel's missing on a lot of talent he's evaluating on the recruiting trail and in the transfer portal.
Guys, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you both, and perhaps I'll sound like a homer. Fred's saying so ready for basketball season. Come on now, guys. There's still a lot to play for. Let's don't go there. But I've lost no confidence in Josh Heupel for this reason. I think innately he is going to be a great offensive mind. I don't think there's any question about that. I think he's stuck with a quarterback that's not a good fit. I will fault him for falling in love with him, just like Caleb said. But I had that same thought before the season started. So my confidence level has not dropped whatsoever in Josh Heupel. I will say this, guys. I think Cooper Mays and Keenan Pili, because of the way they were set to call the plays on both sides of the ball, are two of the worst guys you could have lost. I would argue you'd rather lose Joe Milton than you would either of those guys. And I don't really think Nico's ready to play, which we'll get to. But fellas, I don't know about giving a pass, so to speak, but I think Tennessee's able to run the ball against Florida if they've got Cooper Mays in there. Dan says Heupel did not get stupid overnight. John?
I'm not saying he got stupid. I just pretty much thought he was invincible as a play caller and with his offense. Georgia could stop him, but Georgia's practically has an NFL defense, has had the past 2 years. But producing 30 points against Austin Peay, 16 in the swamp, that's not what I thought of Josh Heupel. I didn't even think that was possible. And maybe that was unrealistic on my part. But I hold him to a really high standard because I think he is such a great offensive coach. I still think he's a great offensive coach. I just think he doesn't know what to do with this offense, with the personnel he has.
Yep. And to give a little bit of context, if you're new to the show, John was extremely high on Josh Heupel in the offseason. And I think we all were. It's just how high are we now? Be sure and hit that like and subscribe button. And I'm going to ask both of you guys, how far has it fallen, the confidence in Josh Heupel? Is it recoverable? And again, that's brought to you by our friends Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Enjoy life better when you see better. Local vision service for LASIK, cataract surgery, and regular eye examination. ccteyes.com, ccteyes.com. Great question by Dan. We all think that this is just Josh Heupel's offense, right?
Yeah, it's Heupel's offense.
Sure.
Okay. What about Alex Golish? Hadn't done much at South Florida yet. And Joey Halsley stepping in. Is that cause for any sort of concern at this point, or do we still say Heupel's the guy? Caleb's shaking his head, so John, let me get your take first.
No, it's Josh Heupel's offense. I mean, it's like in the olden days, criticizing Nick Saban's defensive coordinator. I think he's given up some of that responsibility in running a defense, but he was more involved with the defense earlier on. Didn't matter who the coordinator was; it was Nick Saban's defense. It's the same way with Josh Heupel. It's his offense. You give him the credit, then you got to give him the blame when things go awry. So I don't see Joey Halsley is a long time. He's been a part of Heupel's staff for quite a while now in a different role. Now, what we could have going on is maybe a slight disruption in the communication process. Halsley is in a little different role. That's a possibility. But overall, it's Josh Heupel's offense. As I said, we credit him. Then if things go south, you got to blame him too.
Agreed. And I will say this. So if my confidence level has dropped a little bit in Josh Heupel, which I said it hasn't, but even if it has, I didn't have 100% confidence in Nick Saban before he won 6 championships at Alabama. And the reason was I thought there were times that he sat on leads in the second half, John. So no coach is perfect. I don't think anybody thought that Josh Heupel was perfect, but if your confidence level has dropped a little bit, I can certainly understand it. I mean, it hasn't for me, but I can't call you guys crazy for it.
Well, I mean, I'm comparing him to Steve Spurrier.
Oh,
I've been comparing him to Steve Spurrier.
Now, may I say this, John? In all fairness, Steve Spurrier fell in love. The 2001 game is a prime example. Tennessee fell too in love with throwing the football and putting up big numbers when he could have just throttled down and ran the football and won that game.
Yeah, I mean, you can always find a game where somebody is not at the best, just as you can a player. Still, though, I just got back-to-back games, the way Tennessee's offense has looked. When I compare those 2 games to the previous 27 games, those games did not look like a Josh Heupel offense. If I didn't know this were Tennessee and this were Josh Heupel coaching, I would say, no, that's somebody else. It just didn't look like a Josh Heupel offense.
Yep.
Well,
and
let me push back on the Spurrier thing, though, for a minute, because just quick trivia for you guys. Spurrier's 3rd year at Florida was 1992 at Tennessee. Anybody want to guess how many points he scored at Tennessee that year?
when he was at Duke?
7.
No, when he was at Florida. 3rd year at Florida was 92. 14. They lost 31-14 in that rain-soaked game. A week later, he lost 30-6 to Mississippi State. So Steve Spurrier, the offensive genius, in his 3rd year, Florida was off to a 1-2 start and had scored 14 points and 6 points against Tennessee and Mississippi State. And by the way, Spurrier's first game at Tennessee, when he was with Florida, he scored 3 points and lost 45-3, 1990.
The 92 game, some people will say that the greatest memory of that game is the Tennessee win, or Ernest Graham getting the running back for Florida getting cups thrown at him. I will say it was a surprise rain, and it wasn't supposed to rain. So a lot of the co-eds in the first game that I attended as a student were wearing white shirts. That was my greatest memory. I was like, this college thing, hell, this is for me. I mean, this is absolutely for me. I mean,
I'll let John comment. I'll let John comment on that.
Every young lady in the student section, and I was 18 at the time, so it's okay. But everybody wore white that day for some reason. It's like a wet T-shirt contest in the student.
It was a whiteout, and more came out.
Oh my gosh!
I don't want to be a boob with that comment. 90 seconds, and we'll have. If your confidence level in Joe Milton after Clemson was a 10, what is it now? 90 seconds with John Adams and Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Candace, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Candace has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Do we have confidence issues? Maybe. It's certainly a question that is fair to ask. And we want to get to 4 downs right now. I want to remind you the premier hemp dispensary online is the Hemp House. Hemp House Chat, CHATT.com. The premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. We had the Big Orange Crunch that we were going to offer 50% off, and that was after a Tennessee win. So that's full price this week, John.
Thank you, Dave.
We tried. We had a good idea. And then the trip to Florida happened. So maybe after UTSA, you can get the Big Orange Crunch at half off. We're talking Joe Milton. Confidence, yay or nay? Here we go. 4 downs is brought to you by Harold Group Security Solutions.
4 downs.
4 questions.
4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Okay, this is all about Joe Milton. Pardon me. This is all about Joe Milton. And let's get to 4 downs right now. And if your confidence level has dropped in him, if so, how much? Can you get it back? First, Cooper Mays. Tell the great listeners what they need to do.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
And give us a review if you're out there in the podcast world. We appreciate that. Gets us out there more. And we want to be a part of your day-to-day. We're live at 10 a.m. So let's go ahead and get to first down. Coop
here. First down.
All right. Pretty easy. If your confidence in Joe Milton after the Clemson game was a 10, so I'm putting words in your mouth, what is your confidence level in Joe Milton now? Caleb, I'll begin with you.
Well, if my confidence in Joe Milton's level was a 10 after the Clemson game, it would have been on a scale to 15. So it was never that high, but my confidence level I would say it's 6. It's 5 or 6. Joe Milton was never Hendon Hooker. I never considered him on the level of Hendon Hooker. I don't consider him on the level of the future with Nico Iamalaeva. I consider Joe Milton a guy who was going to miss on a lot of throws, and Tennessee a team that was going to have to play more ball control offense this year, which they're doing. They're just having trouble in some points consistently doing it because of untimely penalties and a few missed blocks by the interior. But Joe Milton's exactly what I kind of thought he would be.
John, yours was a 10, I believe. If that's the case, correct me if I'm wrong. But if
you're wrong, it wasn't a 10.
Okay, what was it?
I didn't even think about it. But I was more confident. I was more confident in him after the Virginia game than I was now. So let's say my confidence level was a 10. That was the question. If it was we're a 10 then, what's it now? I would agree with Caleb, 5 or 6 on a 10-point scale. He started the Florida game by throwing 2 great passes, feathery touch, completions, touchdowns. And so I think he's improved as a passer overall. We didn't see that against Austin Peay, certainly when he started out 1 for 8. But his feel for the game, his decision making, I really question that, and that came up in the Florida game. Things like knowing where to run and when to run. You saw that 2-point conversion try, right?
Yes, and we're going to get to that, which felt very rebellish. And
I'll say in defense of the 2-point conversion, I thought about this over the weekend. It was 29-16 at the time.
That's 4th down.
Oh, okay. We'll get to that. You're right. I'll save it.
Hang tight. All right.
I'm calling my 4th down play on 2nd down, guys.
Yes. Okay. 2nd down, Coop.
Cooper Mays here. 2nd down.
Do you think it's affected his confidence level, the fact that he hasn't gone out there and played? Played well. He's played. John?
John.
Oh, I didn't know whom you were calling on there, Dave. Sorry for the hesitation.
Nobody raised their hand.
Gave me more time to think about it, though. If he's has any self-awareness, it's affected his confidence. You start out a game 1 for 8 passing, that should affect your confidence. You lose a game to Florida and your offense generates 16 points. Yeah, that should affect your confidence. But, maybe he'll bounce back and have a big game against Texas San Antonio.
Yeah, monstrous. He'll river walk them all over Neyland Stadium. I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to tell you I don't think it's changed, and it's brought to you by Herald Group Security Solutions, leadership, experience, specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques, also making your children safer one school at a time. If your child goes to a private school, you need to go tell them about HeraldGRP.com, the Herald Group Security Solutions. We've all heard of the tragedies. They will make your children safer. We're going to fight to get those in public schools as well. Herald Group Security Solutions. I don't think it's affected his confidence. And I went back after John and I discussed this topic, and I watched the press conference after the Florida games, and he said the same thing that Josh Heupel said on Monday. And that was like, oh, it's okay. It's all good. Just shooting ourselves in the foot. Everything's fine. And maybe that's tone deaf, or maybe he's right. We'll find out. But Caleb, I think he goes into this game against UTSA every bit as confident as when he was essentially given the starting role in January over the highly touted freshman Nico. I don't get the sense from a press conference setting that his confidence level is affected, even though it probably should be.
I do. I think it is because, and it's not necessarily the throws, because I think John's right. The throws are much better now. He's put in a lot better touch. His command of the offense deteriorates when things go wrong a lot. And
during the game, I'm with you. Yes. Like on a Tuesday or Wednesday leading up to the game, I think he's like, we got this.
But Okay, but how is he going to respond to this one, though, when I don't lose in Florida? I just lost at Florida. I'm now playing from behind in the SEC East because I just lost at Florida. It's a totally different feel for his confidence. And I've been saying this for a long time. Ask the people at Michigan. They weren't sad to see him go. And it was always the minute something went wrong, he completely unraveled the rest of the season. And so that's a big test for him now.
I agree, but I don't think he thinks it's like that. I think he's cool with rolling out there and letting the chips fall where they may.
Dave, do you think maybe Tennessee should play on Tuesday or Wednesday? You said Tuesday and Wednesday, it's good.
Yes. Get a little maction. That would be fantastic. All right. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. 3rd down.
Can he right the ship? I mean, obviously, it's not just errant passes. You can deal with a couple of those, but it's more along the lines of he's not handling the huddle correctly, and he's letting the clock expire, and we're going to get to the 2-point conversion. Can he right the ship, John?
I really don't think so, but I guess it depends on what your expectations are for where the ship is headed.
Let's go back to the last question. Can he right the ship to get them to a 9-3 season?
I don't think so.
Okay, Caleb?
I think he could right the ship to get him to a 9-3 season, but I don't think there's much. But no, I don't think he can right. I don't think there's any really ship to right. I think Joe Milton is what he is, and I think what you saw with Florida, you can't expect much better out of him. But what you saw is enough for 9-3 if Cooper Mays returns, if things go the way they should. There were a lot of things that happened in that Florida game. And so I think that, 9-3 still on the table, even with Joe Milton playing the way he did against Florida.
Papa J says before we get to 4th down, no, it is mental for Joe. I think he processes things too slowly. I think that was most evident in the pass to Dante Thornton that, man, if he leads him like Hendon Hooker would have, that's a touchdown in stride. And Kirk Herbstreit got all over Dante Thornton for not going up and making a play, and that's fair. But that ball is just thrown late, thrown off target. It shouldn't have been a jump ball. I don't think he processes things quickly enough. And I don't think he has confidence in his offensive line. But I do think he can right the ship once Cooper Mays is back on the field. So I guess I will differ in that regard from John. What down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
What the H was with that 2-point conversion? And Caleb, I know you've got a different take. You referenced it earlier, but the first thing I thought of with a 2-point conversion, and this speaks to field awareness and game awareness, he essentially jumped out of bounds on a 2-point conversion. I don't care if you throw a moon ball that's 30 yards high and lands in the end zone as a jump ball, like to begin an NBA basketball game. You cannot get knocked out of bounds on a 2-point conversion. And you can say that guy was faster than you thought. Oh, you've got to throw the ball up for somebody to make a play, John. Caleb may see it a little bit differently, but you.
No, you throw it behind your back, over your head, lateral it across the field. Or as you said, a jump ball, throw it 30 yards in the air. He can throw it 50 yards in the air. When it lands, it's going to hurt somebody, but maybe one of your guys gets to the deflection. But yeah, that's an all or nothing play. And I wonder about the play call, but just watching him execute it, I didn't understand that, except I do have a past reference with the Ole Miss game in 2021.
Yep. And Caleb, you saw it different. Why? I would love to hear your thoughts on that play.
Yeah. So here's where it's a little bit different from the Ole Miss game. Ole Miss game, it was touchdown or bust. You don't run out of bounds. I will say in Joe Milton's defense on this one. Now, y'all can question whether or not this was going through his mind in the moment. Okay. However, that touchdown makes it 29-16. There is the off chance with the college rules of a pick six on a 2-point play that would give them 2 points the other way. which would make it 31-16. Okay, you would much rather just play it safe and keep it 29-16.
It would be a pick
force
two,
an interception.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, pick two. That's what I mean. It would be a pick two. But here's the thing: if nobody's open, it's 29-16. And if you're not going to get it, then yeah, you still win the game with 2 touchdowns, which you probably need anyway. You probably need 2 touchdowns anyway. So I'm just saying that may not be in Joe Milton's mind.
Caleb, given his game awareness, let me ask you this. Do you believe in your heart of hearts that he thought to himself, I could throw a pick 2. I need a bounce out of bounds?
No, I'm just saying, I'm giving it. It's not as bad as the Ole Miss one.
No, it didn't cost him
nothing is bad. No, obviously Caleb is a contrarian.
You can surrender points on PATs in college football.
I know you can, Cable. But to actually believe that Joe Milton, if that was running through his head as he was running out of bounds, that's an incredible reach.
Was he really running out of bounds in the 2-point play there, or was he forced out of bounds? It wasn't like Ole Miss where he did run out of bounds. It seemed like he was trying to just run.
Bad from a physical play standpoint, but it was very reminiscent.
It seems like he was just trying to run for the 2-pointer, trying to force it in by running, and then he got forced out of bounds by the defense. Whereas with the Ole Miss one, he literally allowed himself to step out of bounds.
All right, here we go. 4th down, and this should be.
I love the way John's looking at me.
We're not even on downs. We're on something completely different. So I want to change gears. John brought this up last night when we were talking, and the first thing I thought of is, what the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
And it's brought to you by Zen Sports. I'll tell you more about them here momentarily. John, when will Nico make his first start for Tennessee? What say you? And then I'll go to Caleb.
I don't know the date on this game. You got a schedule in front of you? I will say UConn.
Wow. That's a couple games away there, John.
It's November, I think.
Yes.
November. I mean, you got to go play South Carolina. I'm sorry.
So you're going to wait till the gauntlet of the SEC just terrorizes Tennessee and destroys them, and then they throw their hands up for the season?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
That's pretty much it, Cal. You read my mind and Joe Milton's mind.
This is not difficult.
I'm going the bowl game. I'm going the bowl game. And the reason I'm going the bowl game is they're not going to bench Milton. Milton's going to opt out at the end of the year to focus on the NFL draft and try to be next year's Anthony Richardson with his arm. And so they're going to start Nico in the bowl game. I don't think they want to start Nico. And I've said this from the start. You throw Nico out there now, you might give him a permanent career-ending injury because he just ain't big enough. And the offensive line is questionable, and you're facing SEC defensive linemen. So I think it's terrible for Nico and the future of Tennessee to throw him out there right now.
Guys, it's going to be against the Mighty Mocs. And as Papa J says, smash that like button. It's going to be against the Mighty Mocs, the first game of 2024. And I'm sharing that based off every indication that I have gotten from my sources that this staff loves Joe Milton. As one person told me, they are not going to make a change barring an injury. It's just not going to happen. So I do not think that will be the case. Now, could he throw 4 interceptions in 3 straight games? Yes. But I think what you're going to see is you're going to see Tennessee not have the explosiveness down the field, average 6 yards per attempt as opposed to 8.5 they did last year. And they're going to kind of middle a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to middle in their schedule. They could still win a lot of games. But I do believe that there's serious concerns, as Caleb mentioned, about Nico's size. And but more than that, even, I think they are in love with Joe Milton. And it's like Jeff Gordon stepping up and seeing the best race car that Hendrick can provide, and then my wife's Altima. Yeah, not to say that Nico's an Altima, but I think that Josh Heupel is in love with the physical ability of Joe Milton. And John, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Well, I can understand their concern about that, but I go back to 1994 when Peyton Manning became the starter. He was very thin. He did not have the build that he had when he left Tennessee. He had kind of a high school body, and I wondered at the time, how would he hold up when he got hit? Well, he didn't get hit that much, for one thing. But I think...
Now, to Caleb's defense, that was a very good offensive line. Tennessee does not have a very good offensive line.
Yeah, they were behind Jason Lehman and Kevin Mays and Bubba Miller. Wasn't he on that team? Bubba Miller was the defensive line, wasn't he?
The 94 team did not have a great offensive line.
Well, like 3 of those starters went on to the NFL. Because the 95 team, at least, Jay Graham set the rushing record in 95 behind that offensive line.
I know, but in 94, they struggled offensively at times. I just think I'm a big believer in talent prevails over everything else. And I also believe somebody really talented, that what you see in practice isn't always what you get in a game, that really talented athletes can rise to the occasion. And when they get that shot, they make the most of it. So I'm not saying they should play Nico right now, but I'm just wondering the way the season might go. At some point, you can't be afraid to play Nico. I mean, how good's the offensive line going to be next year? You think this offensive line is struggling? Wait till next year.
Yeah, they need at least 2 significant transfer portal guys.
I'd go for 5.
Yeah, and 5 would be good. 3. I mean, my goal would be 3. And John, you brought up a good point that I don't want to get too sidetracked on here. I'll remind everybody that this portion of the program is brought to you by Zen Sports. Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares. On Zen Sports, what you see is what you get. And with their cash rewards program, you get a lot of cash for a welcome bonus. Earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED. Unlimited 5% cash back. Download the app, use HOOKED. Keep betting and keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month. After that, refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports is bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. John, you brought up a good point last night. We'll let you out of here. And that was Tennessee needs to be taking guys from smaller programs. And I think McAllen Castles is a good example of that have proven they're too good for that level and they're hungry, as opposed to guys that may be cast-offs from other programs, a la Dante Thornton. While we all think Keenan Pilley would have been very good, we don't know. And the rest of the guys that they've had and transfer portal guys have either gotten suspended, beat really bad on the edge, or not been nearly as good as we were led to believe.
Yeah, I go back to last season when Billy Napier went from Louisiana to Florida. Osiris Torrance, offensive guard, went with him, and he was a 2-time all-conference player at Louisiana, and he moved over to Florida and continued to elevate his game, became an NFL draft pick. I like those guys because people that are productive at a lower level, linebackers who make a lot of tackles, receivers who make a lot of catches. You feel as though they're motivated. If they have to make that decision to go to a higher level of play, that tells me they believe they can. They're confident and they're very ambitious. Those are the kind of guys I like, as opposed. Now, if you can get a guy who's a proven player with a Power 5 conference school, sure. But if you get guys that are kind of shaky, you're not not certain of, you're more hopeful of what they might become, I would go the other route.
John, I like to think of myself as the man, but how can I be the man when you're the man?
Talk to you later, Dave. Thanks for having me on the show.
John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. But seriously, how do we follow your work before we get you out of here?
KnoxNews.com, GoVolsExtra.com. Check out our SEC Unfiltered podcast with Blake Topmeyer.
Yep, great stuff. That Blake Topmeyer, he's got some skills. Appreciate you.
Take care, guys.
He's John Adams. I'm Dave Hooker. We appreciate John joining us. And Omarr Norman-Lott suspended, as this roster is absolutely not what we thought it would be in late July, early August. I want to go through some of those things and why I think you should have a little bit more patience with Josh Heupel because of that and because the transfers have not worked out to this point. We can blame him for that, but I'm just telling you, I think he deserves a little bit of break. I got a feeling Caleb may disagree with me. I want your thoughts too. 2 minutes with Caleb. I'm Dave, Off the Hook Sports.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We are grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All righty. I want to clarify something. I think most of you agreed with John Adams. We had one person that said, get him off the channel. Well, I mean, if you want objective viewpoints here, you're talking about 3 people when we're on the channel together that have over 100 years of experience covering football. So we'll tell you like it is. If that's not what you want to hear, then we would hate to lose you. We love you here, but there's another channel that can't spell that likes to talk Vols, so you can certainly check them out as well. By the way, who doesn't like to mention the fact that Off the Hook Sports broke the players only meeting, which I thought was a huge, monstrous deal. And but anyway, when you can't spell, then that makes it tough to get proper attribution. So that can be difficult. And I want to thank our friends at A to Z Sports, Zach Reagan, saying definitely hate how that played out, that you broke the story. I thought he was very nice in that, and he appreciates our work, and I hope you do too. Go ahead and click on that like and subscribe button. Before we get to our next topic, I want to throw out a couple of things that are on the message board, because we have the smartest, and I mean hands down, the smartest listeners. They can all spell how to talk Vols. And we have the smartest listeners and viewers that that are out there. And Tom's one of the best, even though I disagree vehemently with Tom on some things. He said, I watched it for years, and as assistant coach, teams that don't hit in practice, when you stink on game day, when I took over and made practice tougher than games we won. Listen, Tom's not just sounding like, oh, back in my day. No, Tom, you're right. You got to hit some in practice, and Tennessee does not hit very much in practice. Now, by the same token, you were the most exciting team in the nation last year, so I don't think it's an absolute, but I do think it's worth discussing. Back to the Nico thing, we had one person, Elias, say, for the record, my call on Nico's first start is at Kentucky. A Smoky Mountain Red says, I mean, if I had what I thought was a Ferrari in the garage, I would at least take it for a cruise and see what happens if my other cars kept breaking down. You only live once. If you don't take a chance to enjoy it, life's going to pass you by. I think it was Ferris Bueller that said that and took the Ferrari out of the garage.
Very okay. How about this though? How about this? Because it's not about. Oh, it's not just about the.
But he did wreck the Ferrari, Caleb. To your point about bringing Nico out.
Yes, exactly. Because it's not okay. There's what the quarterback can do physically and where they are mentally, and the mental part is who's the driver of the car. For instance, if you have if Joe Milton's a BMW, well, there's some 75-year-old grandma driving the BMW right now. Okay, whereas if Hendon Hooker was an Altima, Jeff Gordon was driving the Altima, like you would say. Okay, a Ferrari, if Nico Iamalaeva is a Ferrari, well, he's still like the other intangible factors is like a 5-year-old child driving that Ferrari right now, okay? You don't want a 5-year-old child driving that Ferrari. You need somebody at about 21 or 23.
I think our analogies are getting mixed up. To me, Josh Heupel and the coaching staff, they're the driver. The quarterback is the car. But nevertheless, now the post of the day, Travis says, doesn't matter who our quarterback is if our line play doesn't get better. That is absolutely right. So,
running Hendon Hooker or Cooper Mays would have won that game yesterday, but you needed one of them.
Ooh, good line. Could be a column in that for you. So one or the other, not necessarily both.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker or Cooper Mays wins that game at Florida.
Caleb continually surprises me. All right, so here's what we thought before the season started. We thought Tennessee had a good group of incoming transfer guys that were going to be able to have a major impact. So far, they have not had a major impact. And why wouldn't we have thought that with Brew McCoy? But now Omarr Norman-Lott has been suspended, and Dante Thornton has looked like just an okay receiver. He only had 20-some catches at Oregon. Did we get ahead of ourselves and too excited because he's big, fast, and can run? I mean, people talk about him like he's Randy Moss, and Randy Moss goes up and gets that pass against Florida, and it's a touchdown. So he ain't Randy Moss. I don't know that he's even all SEC or even close. John Campbell has gotten beat at times. Now, Dylan Sampson was banged up and didn't play. I wrote a column about this on offthehooksports.com, and I'd love for you to check it out. This roster with the Peely and Mays injury is just not what it was perceived to be. Caleb, it's not even close. And the latest coming when the SEC levies a suspension for the first half against UTSA, against Omarr Norman-Lott, also 3 Gators suspended. But this roster right now, if you thought it was an A, which I think is about right, maybe an A-, I think it had some holes in it. But if you thought that, then now you're looking at the roster, and I'm talking about the 2 deep, Caleb. There's 2 different things. I'm not talking about the 1 to 85, which I think has improved as a whole. But the 2 deep, if you thought that was an A to begin the year, you've got to downgrade that a little bit based off injuries and based off the lack of production by the transfer guys. As a C? C-?
The star power is C or C-, and Josh Heupel's offense depends on the star power. The depth is, you miss the depth, and that's important. And you're right, you got a lot more of that. But you still need those 2 receivers that everybody in the country is afraid to guard. And I mean, Brew McCoy's kind of getting there. And it's not just Dante Thornton, though. I know Ramel Keaton has been reliable, but Ramel Keaton is only reliable when the star power elsewhere allows him to be your effective playmaker, and he hasn't been able to do that. So this comes down to Dante Thornton and Squirrel White in the slot. Both have actually been disappointing, not just Dante Thornton, Squirrel White too. But yeah, Dante Thornton.
No, I'm going to disagree with you on Squirrel. I don't think he's had the opportunities, and he had a really tenacious run that got a first down. But we can agree to disagree on one guy. That's fine.
Well, that's fair. I could actually get you. I could get down with you on Squirrel. Maybe just make him the starter full time and move Dante to the bench because he's been completely unreliable, and that's been a big issue.
I think they put Dante in there because he's big and he might catch a jump ball. And that's exactly the route he ran for them. But the ball was out slow and the ball was out underthrown. But I think that's exactly why they put him in there over Squirrel at that time.
Well, this is my thing with Josh Heupel, and I have to say this. I think Josh Heupel does not pay attention to intangibles at all in players. And I don't know if you believe that, Dave, but I think Josh Heupel thinks if you can do this, this, and this, I'm not going to question your work ethic. I'm not going to question, if you're going to fight for a ball. I'm not going to question your understanding of the offense. I think Josh Heupel is like, I do all of that. You guys are just moving parts, and I can plug you in based on your physical abilities. That's an underrated part of coaching, isn't it? You got to question and manipulate and push players' intangibles. And we're seeing this time and time again where he's just falling in love with the physical tools of players and nothing else.
Now I'll disagree with one comment about Brew. Well, I'm not disagreeing with it. He's never going to be a deep threat. No, he's not. But I think he can be an elite receiver. I don't think we've seen the top end. Don't count last year because they didn't know if he was going to play because the NCAA didn't clear him. Okay, so I'm not counting last year, but physically when the eye test and the way he's able to make plays, I think there are times where you just throw it to Brew no matter what if it's one-on-one because he's going to put himself between the defender and the ball and he's going to catch it more times than not. And he's not going to give up an interception because he's the most physical, biggest receiver that is still athletic in the SEC. And one of them in the nation. I am telling you, this guy is going to be a first-round pick. Or at least a second-round pick. I'll go no lower than that. So I think we looked at Brew and what Brew did last year, considering the preseason issues with the NCAA, and you said, oh, well, this Josh Heupel guy, he's got the money. He's going to go out and get great guys in the transfer portal. And then what do you have? You have Omarr Norman-Lott, who gets suspended. What do you think of his play? I want to talk about these transfers for a second. What do you think about Omarr Norman-Lott's play as we look at the transfers to this point? Good? Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Not that impressive.
Yeah. I mean, they got a bunch of guys, so they rotate them a lot. So we haven't seen him in 20 consecutive plays, I don't think. John Campbell Jr., very on and off. There are times where he's driving people back into the student sections. There are other times where he is just giving up woeful pass rushes. And I think that's scary. I'd rather have a guy that's consistently above average in pass protection as opposed to a guy who's really good in pass protection then really bad in pass protection. That scares me.
Yeah, I mean, John Campbell Jr. is erratic as I'll get out. And people fall, again, that's Josh Heupel falling in love with the physical abilities and not caring and not paying attention to the mental errors he's making in the game consistently, which I'm seeing he's not maintaining blocks long enough too. That's a big one. Everybody fell in love with him blocking a guy blindside style out of the stadium against Virginia. And that's just not, there's more to playing left tackle than that. And I've been critical of John Campbell from the start, and I'm still not in love with him the way everybody else is.
I do like the fact that he came in and grabbed a starting job. Okay, so give him some
He was
credit.
given the starting job.
Well, given, but he locked it down because another guy didn't. And I want to get to him. Because, listen, if you come from a Power 5 conference, you need to come in and you need to lock down a starting job from the get. And maybe he was given it. Maybe it was out of desperation, but he did lock it down. Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Sports Treasures in North Knoxville. They carry Celebrate 98, the book. They've got it there, or you can order it right down there for a personalized copy. Remember, they won a championship 25 years ago. Andre Keurig, it took an injury for him to be a starter. When you come from Texas, if you evaluated him correctly, he should be a starter from day one. At least give John Campbell credit for that. And Andre Keurig needed somebody to get hurt to be a starter.
Well, wasn't he going to start anyway? It was Ollie Lane who was the odd man out.
I think Ollie Lane was going to start at left guard. And I think that Cooper Mays was going to start at center. I think that's the shift based off what I had been told. Do I feel 100% about that? No, but I feel about 75, 80.
Ollie's a reliable blocker. That works out because he just makes a lot of mental errors at center sometimes, which we saw with Florida rattled by the crowd.
Is he a reliable blocker?
I think at guard.
Yeah.
Not at center.
Oh, at guard. Agreed. Okay. He looked very good against Virginia and really even Austin Peay. There was a push, but we now know how bad they are. Keenan Pili, incomplete. We don't know how good he would have been, but man, the reviews were all fantastic. Charles Campbell at kicker, fine.
Gabe Judy Lally.
Yeah, I was going to get to the two that I like. The two that I like are Gabe Judy Lally. And the reason I like Gabe Judy Lally is because I think that he came in with a mindset of I can play whatever position you need me to play, and I give you depth in a place where you need depth. So those were my expectations for him. He has reached those expectations. Is he Deion Sanders or is he Troy Polamalu? No, but it's pretty darn good. So I would take him. I don't know if you're as okay with him as I am, but still okay. He's on a grand.
He did give up 4 catches on 4 targets, I think it was on Saturday, but
that's fair. That is fair. And then who's the superstar out of the group? It's McCallan Castles. Now, what does he have in common with, or not in common with, any of these dudes? Okay, so the position players, I'm going to take Campbell out of this. Judy Lally comes from BYU, Power 5 program. Campbell comes from the University of Miami, Power 5 program. Omarr Norman-Lott, Power 5 program. Arizona State, Thornton, Oregon, Power 5 program. Pili, BYU, Power 5. Keurig, Texas. Good gracious. That's as Power 5 as they get. So Campbell is from Indiana. That's still Power 5. But McCallan Castles came from UC Davis. I want to say UC Irvine all the time. He came from UC Irvine. So he gets this opportunity and he's playing up a level because he was just too darn good when you watched him on tape to play at that level. I'm not saying these other guys are cast-offs, but they weren't so incredibly good that Texas, who has all the money in the world, said, we're going to come up with an NIL deal to keep you, Andre Keurig. We're not letting you go. They didn't do that.
No, I said this last year. Most Power 5 transfers are transfers because they couldn't play where they were at. Again, you don't usually get your Hendon Hookers of the world who were just playing under a terrible, terrible coaching staff. And quarterbacks are a little bit different anyway, and it depends on when quarterbacks transfer. You're right. Go for the smaller guys because that's the guys that were misevaluated at different levels. And I think that's a much better help for you.
So let me get your thoughts on the Norman-Lott suspension. And you've studied the end of that game. Just so you guys know, unless it's a really close game, at the end of the game, Caleb and I are absolutely hustling to get articles up on offthehooksports.com and have the big wrap show brought to you by Herald Group Security Solutions and the Hemp House. So we got a lot going on, but Caleb's gone back and studied that. And your thoughts on the suspension, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. We want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals? And check out Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Just go to rickterryjewelry.com. A Tennessee tradition, those Fire Opals, orange and gorgeous, and they're affordable. Get them for your loved one. Your thoughts on the Norman-Lott suspension?
He shouldn't be suspended at all. He didn't even throw a punch. He's suspended because of that hit on Graham Mertz at the very end. There were like 9 seconds left. That's not enough time to take a knee. That's natural to like try to force a fumble if they're rolling back. Now, yeah, it's a penalty because Mertz lowered his head, and because of that, Norman-Lott did accidentally hit his helmet when he was trying to like knock him to the ground to force a fumble. But it wasn't anything to warrant a suspension. So it was stupid. He shouldn't be suspended. And I'm standing by that. 2 guys shoved him after that from Florida. Suspend them. And by the way, they got a completely right to suspend 3 Florida players and 1 Tennessee player, and Norman-Lott being the only one. But they shouldn't have even suspended Norman-Lott. Nobody from Tennessee threw a punch. Go back and watch the tape. Not one person threw a punch at the end of that game from Tennessee. And that's the thing that annoys me about the SEC is they're trying to make a statement that Norman-Lott shouldn't have started this by his tackle on Graham Mertz. Well, that's stupid. Okay? You're trying to do a false equivalency, SEC. Norman-Lott did nothing wrong. He should not be suspended. It was all Florida players throwing the punches. This would be like after the Malice at the Palace in 2004, when Artest went into the stands and beat up a fan. This would be like the NBA saying, well, we had to suspend Ben Wallace as long as we suspended Ron Artest because Ben Wallace technically started the fight. That doesn't matter. It's about what's proportional in that moment. And Norman-Lott just maybe laid a penalty-worthy hit at the end of a game. He didn't throw any punches after the game. So it is stupid to suspend him, and this is the SEC trying to be diplomatic and democratic in the process.
Yeah, I don't think you can suspend 3 players on one team and not one on the other. I think if it was just one player for Florida, you would say, oh, that's just one player for Florida. I think the fact that you had 3 players suspended for Florida, you felt like you had to throw a Gator in there. And also, Mel Tucker fired at Michigan State. Say something intriguing while I clear my throat.
Michigan State has told Mel Tucker they intend to fire him.
Yes.
Basically.
I thought you were going to say something intriguing since I said say something intriguing.
Well, no, I'm just going to say.
You could have just responded with something. John used to do that to me. I'd say something interesting while I clear my throat, and he'd say something interesting. Mel Tucker's been told by Michigan State he is going to get fired, and part of a phone sex scandal that was not very Spartan-like. Instead of "We are Sparta," Mel Tucker would pick up the phone and say, "We are sexting." No, he didn't say that. But how can this affect the Vols? Because any coaching shuffle has connections. These guys are all intertwined like coral. And could Tennessee see any of its coaches poached, or how do you see this playing out as far as affecting the Vols? Mel Tucker will be fired at Michigan State. And by the way, he was supposed to get the Tennessee job, but the Vols went with Jeremy Pruitt. So the worst of 2 evils, paying players or sexting with somebody that's a advocate against sexual harassment. They both seem pretty bad. Go ahead, Kevin.
Tim Banks, I could see being targeted for this job, maybe as an assistant, not a head coach. A couple other guys connected, but the way it really affects.
Can I stop you there for a second? Why not head coach?
I don't think. I think Michigan. No, I think Tim Banks could start a career as a head coach, but I think right now, given his resume, it'd be a smaller Group of 5 program first. I don't think a Power 5 program that was a top 10 program 2 years ago is going to give him a head coaching job just yet. I don't think he's at that level with his resume.
Fair, and I don't think that Michigan State. I'm gonna disagree with you and agree with you at the same time. I think he's worthy of that type of job, like right now. And the resume should be a little bit bigger. I agree. But I'll tell you this. I don't think they would go down the path of a defensive coach after they just got kind of burned by one with Mel Tucker.
I think they might, because again, Mark D'Antonio, I think D'Antonio was an offensive mind, but you know those offensive coaches that run the program like a defensive program because they're more physical, tough. I mean, Fulmer was that way. Fulmer was an offensive coach, but he ran more of a program from a defensive mindset, I would say. You know, toughness, physicality, all of that. I think Mark Stoops is a very, very, very high quality candidate for this job. And I think Tennessee fans should be rooting for that left and right, because Kentucky is only as good as a coach like Mark Stoops can make them.
And he's a one in a half century. The other one was Paul Bear Bryant.
Yes, Mark Stoops and Bear Bryant. That's it. That's all you got. And I actually thought Rich Brooks was a very good coach at Kentucky. He maxed out, but Mark Stoops has taken it to another level, which was incredible. Hal Mummy was good, hasn't done what Mark Stoops has done. So, yeah, Mark Stoops, if he can do this at Kentucky, what he's been doing, Tennessee fans should want Stoops out of there now. Because, look, they're still going to beat Kentucky regularly, but right now it's still a game you actually have to prepare for, and you can't just fall out of bed and win. And you don't want to have to deal with that in the future. So Tennessee should want Michigan State right now to go after Kentucky and Mark Stoops. So should Florida. So should the rest of the SEC. Because you already have it outside of this year, Dave. The SEC is a grind on its own. You don't want to have to. You don't want Kentucky to have to be one of those teams you have to worry about, given the rest of your SEC slate.
Agreed. And I respect Stoops every bit as much as you do. But again, a defensive coach, I think they would go along the lines of an offensive coach, try to get some sort of innovator in there. And I don't know that guy's out there necessarily. Can you think of someone perhaps even in the SEC that they would look at and say, that's the guy, that's who they want to go after? I don't see anybody else really in the SEC at the assistant level or a head coach that would leave.
I think Kiffin would be happier at Michigan State.
Well, I knew you were going to go there. I've always got my eye on Kiffin, but I don't think he'll ever leave the SEC. I think he loves the SEC and he realizes that it's analogous to the NFL with the passion, the pay. I think he's frustrated at Ole Miss because there's a glass ceiling there. No, I don't think he would do that.
Okay. I think look, Michigan State, I think Michigan State should go for an innovative coach, because I do think one of Michigan's biggest problems is they keep and this is one of Harbaugh's biggest problems. It's funny that Ohio State has been the offensive innovation program in the Big Ten over the past 10 years, because if any program can afford to not be the innovative program, it's Ohio State, because there's so much talent in that state. Michigan needs the innovator, and this is why Michigan gets to the playoff and doesn't win. And I honestly, all things being equal, Dave, I think Penn State's a better job than Michigan State or Michigan in football, only because the talent is better in Pennsylvania than it is Michigan.
Yeah, but Michigan does such a great job of rating Ohio. It's almost like their Georgia,
like Oklahoma rating Texas.
What? Yes, or their Atlanta area when Tennessee's at its best, rating that area. So I don't think it's better than Michigan. I think Penn State's a better job than Michigan State. But I mean, let's be honest too. I mean, you thought Tennessee was an undesirable job for a lot of years, and it was because of all the issues they had and that sort of thing. I mean, how undesirable is Michigan State right now when you got a coach that was involved in a sexual scandal? You have the Larry Nassar thing that's out there, which is just absolutely disgusting. I mean, if I had my choice of Michigan State or Appy State, I might take Appy State over Michigan State. You're never going to win there. I mean, you're never going to win the Big Ten at Michigan State. You're always second fiddle to Michigan.
Yeah, and, it's going to be more in the news for the next 2 years because, as we know, Simone Biles is going back to the Olympics, who was the most high-profile victim of Larry Nassar. And
I'll just say, for those of you that don't know, you can Google it. I don't want to get into it because it's gross.
It's gross.
It has to do with sexually assaulting female adolescents and minors.
Which is why, by the way, when she had whatever she had a couple of years ago and people said she let her team down, the gymnastics team at the Olympics, Simone Biles owes that Olympic team nothing.
I think it's called the Zoomies or the Swirlies.
Something like that. I forget what it's called, but she owes that Olympic team nothing, okay? Because they covered up for Larry Nassar sexually assaulting her, and she's not getting paid in those Olympics. Okay, she's nice enough to just go compete with them, and so is every member that was a victim of the Larry Nassar trial. But you're right, Larry Nassar, Michigan State, and the Olympic team covering up for it. And then this is probably why they came down so hard on Mel Tucker, by the way. I mean, also, they might have come down because, Dave, I think they wanted to get out of having to pay out his contract.
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, there's no question. Michigan State, SEC equivalents to me around the level of Ole Miss. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think that they're in the middle of the pack there, and they probably can't win a championship, but they can have a good 10-win season now and again, but they're probably on average an 8-win type of program. So I think that's pretty fair, but I can tell you this.
I actually think they're higher in the Big Ten than Ole Miss is in the SEC, but that's because the SEC has more national brands than the Big Ten. I mean, I think after Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, Michigan State might be the 4th best job.
Let me ask you this, because it would be huge if Mark Stoops left for Tennessee's betterment. So you're Mark Stoops, and he's making a good bit of coin at Kentucky. You're Mark Stoops. They built you a facility. They've got the Kroger Field where you can check in and check out. And if Michigan State came to you and said, I will offer you double, I will give you the same stupid contract we gave Mel Tucker, double the cash, will you come? And you're Mark Stoops. You say,
I think you go take it. I think you go take it.
I don't even take the phone call.
You don't take the phone call from Michigan State?
Nope.
You stay at Kentucky?
Yep.
Where John Calipari is going to try to railroad your program every other day?
I do. I know it sounds crazy. I don't want any part of Michigan State. I don't want.
I will give you this. The only thing I will say is we've looked at the potential annual rivals for the SEC, and Kentucky's probably going to have the easiest slate because I think theirs is going to be Missouri and Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, which is like a dream, like annual 3-game rivalry. And with the college football playoff expanding to 12 teams, Kentucky has a chance to be in the race every 4 years if you're Mark Stoops.
I think Mark Stoops is going to be the front end of a trend here before long because it's all offense right now. And he's a defensive coach who's done a good job at Kentucky running a program. And I think that if let's say a Colorado came to him and said, we're going to give you the money to hire the assistant coaches you need, I think he could have very, very good success and get approached by a big-time program. I'm talking about a top 3rd Power 5 program, which is Power 3 now or whatever the heck it is.
Well, that's what the Big Ten is trying right now with Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. And I don't know if it's going to last or not, but because Luke Fickell's having, I think, a bad first year. But Luke Fickell did that at Cincinnati and got them to the playoff.
The problem with Luke Fickell is he just seems to have trouble making up his mind. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports, every weekday at 10 a.m. Caleb, I saw you roll your eyes at that one. Have a fantastic day, evening, morning, whenever you're watching. We're on all the platforms. Turn the notifications on. Please give us a review. We greatly appreciate that. For Caleb, I'm Dave.